Hi everyone, in this video I'll cover useReducer hook, which many beginners think it's extremely difficult to learn. So in this video I'll give you a simple good explanation on useReducer hook. But before we start our video, if you are someone who starts learning React and wanna master it and become better React developer, I would recommend to subscribe to my channel. Here in our channel we'll teach you all you need to know in React library and make sure you have a good deep understanding in the React. So if that sounds interesting, make sure to subscribe to won't miss our videos. And now let's start our video. So now, what is useReducer and why we need to use it? So useReducer is a hook used when you have too many states in a single component. So useReducer provides more predictable state transitions than useState, which becomes more important when state changes, that you want to have one place to manage the state. So in our example here we have a simple application where we have two states, one called count, which is a number starting at 0, and the other which is a boolean called show text. And basically what happens is we have this button, and when we click on this button it's going to increment our count variable by 1, and it's going to toggle our show text. So what happens is when we click on this button over here, it both increments the count plus 1, and it also sets the show text boolean to be the opposite. So basically what's happening is we are alternating two different states at the same time by clicking on the same button. So I want you to think about this, what kind of actions and what kind of states we are changing. So what kind of actions we are actually taking when we click on this button. So we alternating to the value of the count state, and we are alternating the value of the show text state. So the first thing we need to do to use useReducer is to import it over here with React. And now what I have just did over here is just remove the two states count and show text, and we are actually going to include both of the states in the same object. So we can make a variable over here. Let's call it initial state, and this initial state is gonna take the count. That is going to initialize in 0. That is going to get the value of 0, and the show text which is gonna be a true. So and now to use useReducer you need to type the function, the hook useReducer. And useReducer is a function that is going to take two parameters. The first one is gonna be a function that is called reducer. I'll explain it in just a moment. And the second one is initial state. So here you can put your initial state, which should be an object of initial values that you want to start with. So in our example here we have our initial state variable, which includes both count and show text. So we put initial state over here, and this useReducer is going to return to us a pair of two values in an array. So what we can do is destructure this array, and the first value that useReducer is gonna return is the state that has all the values and is going to change. And the second one is a function called dispatch. So basically reducer is a function that is going to manipulate and change our state, and dispatch is essentially a function that is going to sense the type of action to the reducer function to change the state. So what we need to do here is creating a reducer function, and this reducer function is gonna take two parameters. The first one is gonna be a state, which is the current state and the second one is gonna be an action. And an action is basically an object that contains type and payload, and those two are information to help us update our state. Now I'll come back and explain payload, but let's just focus on the type of an action. So type is gonna differentiate between all the actions. So for example, if I have an action type called increment, I wanna increment the count, and if I have an action called decrement, I wanna decrement my count. So you can see each action type is gonna update our state, and each action type is different from the other. So let's back to our example, and here I'm going to use the switch, and inside of switches we're going to put action dot type. So inside of the switch we are going to make a condition. So in our first case we will put case increment, and you can type it in a lowercase, but many developers type it in that way. And in that case we wanted to return a new object, and in that case we wanted to return an object that is going to represent the new state value. So what we wanna to do here is return the new value of count in that object. So we can type count equals to state count plus 1, and so the action is an increment, so we're not going to change the show text, so we're just going to type show text. It's gonna be equals to show state.show text. And the second case is gonna be a toggle, and here we're going to just to change the show text. So we're going to put the show text equals to not show text, and count is gonna be the same. But notice here our state is an object that has two elements. Okay, so if for example we have 10 elements or more, we cannot keep writing all of them. So what we can do is copy the rest, and the way we can do that is by using spread operator. So basically we put 3 dots, and we need to put use the spread operator in the first at first in the object. So we put 3 dots over here, and we put the state object here. So the spread operator is an ESX feature that allows us to quickly copy all the part of an existing array or object into another array or object. But if for example here we have 2 same keys, then it's gonna, in that object, JavaScript is going to ignore the key that is inside of the spread operator and gonna take the last key. I will make a video on them on the future, on what ESX features you should focus on. And we can put a default when none of the actions types is there. So we're going to return just the state. So all left to do here is we go here and change the values. So we put inside of this heading 4, we put state.count, and here we can put we have to put the state.show text. And now all left to do is dispatching the action. So we type the dispatch, and inside of it is gonna be an object because it's an action, and we put the type, that the action that we wanted to do. So here we put the increment action, and we put the toggle one. And now if I save the changes and go back to the browser, you can see that it works perfectly. Last thing I want to cover here in this video is a payload in the action. So payload is basically a data that provides more information about this action. And now in our last example here, we have I added a button called increment amount, and I made a variable called amount, set it to a 10. And what I want to do here is I want to increment by amount. So when I click on this button, I want to increment the count by the amount variable. So how we can do that in the useReducer? So the way we do that is by using the payload. So here, when you click on this button, we make the dispatch function, and we all know that we need to put the object, and inside of it we put the type of the action that we wanted to make. So we can type, for example, increment amount, and we are going to use a payload. Now you can name it however you want, but many developers use the payload name, and inside the payload you just put the data that you want to send in the reducer. So in our example here, we put the amount, and we go back to the reducer function. So we make a new case, and we're going to make a case name increment amount, and we're going to return a new object that has the state, and we're going to put the count equals to state count plus action dot payload. If I now save the changes and go to our browser and click this button, you can see we are incrementing by 10. So if I, for example, change that and put, for example, 500 or something like that, and save the changes and start clicking, you can see our count is incrementing by the payload that we put it. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe and share it with your friends. See you guys in the next video.